Hello, fearless listeners. Welcome to Let Fear Bounce, the weekly podcast that brings you inspiration and motivation and a nugget of hope. Join me, Kim Langling, as I chat with awesome guests from all walks of life who share how they have conquered their fears. So get ready, my friends, to be empowered to let your own fears bounce. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. This is Kim Langling, your host, and I am so happy and pleased that you are deciding to spend just a small part of your day with myself today and my special guest, Barbara Walsh, because we know that your time is precious and we appreciate you. So Barbara, she became a board-certified master health coach after overcoming breast cancer naturally. Yeah, you heard that, folks. Naturally. Without surgery, radiation, or chemo. Now 8 years cancer-free, she helps her professional women in their 40s fearlessly take control of their health and jumpstart a metabolic reset in their bodies to not only avoid being sidelined by a breast cancer diagnosis in the future, but to regain their energy and their waistline. So they feel confident about their health and love what they see when they look in the mirror right now, each day. Barbara, welcome to Let Fear Bounce.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here today.
Now, we were talking briefly off mic before I hit that record button that I had been looking forward to having you on because a family member, my sister, also experienced stage 1 breast cancer, and that was her second bout with cancer. And cancer, you could just start that word with the F word, fear.
Yeah.
And this show is all about, it's called Let Fear Bounce for a reason. And that's why I so enjoy having, warriors like you coming on and sharing your story and giving inspiration to those who might be sitting in that fear right now. Maybe they've gotten a diagnosis, because we all know when you get a diagnosis that's life altering, fear comes in. No matter how hard you try and beat it back, it will creep its way in. So I thank you so much once again for being my guest today, Barbara. I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too. Me too.
All right. So you are a board certified master health coach.
Yeah.
Now, you weren't always that, though, were you?
No, I
So
was.
what were you in your previous life, and how did you, and that I briefly said in your bio, but take us on your journey, if you would.
Okay. Well, prior to my breast cancer diagnosis, I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I was a business owner and I was very, very busy. High stress, high pace, got to get everything done kind of deal. Probably not unlike a lot of people listening to this show, right?
Right.
And so, but the weird thing is that I really felt like at that moment in time, like everything was really, really great. Like everything was good. My son was good. My husband was good. We were just celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary. Everything was just going great. And my son was getting to the point where he was going to be, he was in high school, but we were thinking about, well, soon he's going to go off to college and he's going to go out and start his own life and, all that stuff. And I was kind of excited for him, but I was really excited for us as a couple because I thought, well, great. Now we're getting to the point where like we could do some stuff, like we could travel, we could do all this great stuff. And in my mind, I had this wonderful picture of what our future was going to be as empty nesters. We were going to travel, we were going to do all this wonderful stuff. And so then I went in for my annual mammogram and my checkup, and they saw something suspicious. And then they sent me for a biopsy, which I went to. And after all of that, they came back to me and they said, we're really, really sorry to tell you this, but you have breast cancer. And at that moment, like you talked about the fear is like palpable in the room when they talk to you. And not only that, but it's so overwhelming that you just really can't even breathe. And at that moment, my beautiful future just kind of like dissipated like smoke. It was just
Right.
like gone. All I could picture was, a very bleak future of just being in and out of treatments, constantly being at doctors, being sick probably a majority of the time. And it was really, really a scary, scary thing. And so, my husband went with me to the oncologist because they sent me to a breast surgeon. And they basically prescribed to me, which is the protocol that they prescribe to absolutely every single person, regardless of what type of cancer it is. It's always going to be surgery to cut out whatever tissue might be suspect. It's going to be radiation to burn out any cancer that might be there. And it's always going to be chemotherapy. And in my case, because I had an estrogen positive breast cancer, the other portion of the protocol was going to be on tamoxifen, which is an estrogen blocker for the rest of my life. And it's so crazy because they really want you to get your surgery scheduled. They want you to get into treatment like before you can even really process what is happening to you and what you're facing. It's just like the most unbelievable thing. It's like you're sitting there. It's like you're being in a movie. You're just sitting there and all this stuff is happening and you don't even know what it is. And so as they were telling me about this treatment, my husband said to the doctor, okay, well, if my wife does this, will she be cured? And the doctor gave me this really interesting answer that at the time I found very dissatisfying. She said to me, well, there are no guarantees. We'll consider your treatment to be a success if there's no recurrence within 5 years. And I thought, 5 years? And I thought about the treatments. And I thought, even though this was my first experience being diagnosed with this, I knew that radiation causes cancer. We know that. I mean, even if you go to the dentist, they take that little picture for like a second,
Right.
and then they load you up with the vest, and then the tech like goes running out of the room for fear to take that picture for 2 seconds. And that's like a little exposure,
Right.
So we know that that causes cancer. It's well documented in scientific literature that chemotherapy causes cancer. It does. And most people, even if they're not aware of that, they really need to know that it is a carcinogen according to like the NIH and, the National Cancer Institute. If you do your research, you'll find it out there. And then I found out later that tamoxifen also is associated with the development of uterine cancer. So I started thinking about this and I thought, if I do this treatment, there's probably a good bet that I'm going to have recurrence in 5 years. Because think about it logically, if you're constantly exposing yourself to something that's toxic, something that's going to be a cancer causing agent, it logically makes sense. What would preclude me from, getting a recurrence if I'm constantly putting this stuff in my body?
Yeah, and that leads me to thinking because, as I had said before, my sister has had cancer twice, and I clearly recall after her first cancer, and this is probably 12, 13 years ago now,
Mm-hmm.
the doctor said, we got everything that we could, and this is what we're going to do. And they just did radiation. She didn't have to have chemo, but she did radiation. And they said, but the extent of what we had to take out and where it was all located, you're now bumped up to probably within 10 years, you may have a recurrence of cancer elsewhere in your body. She was very clear on that. And I'm thinking, well, if you got it, what's making it come back somewhere else? And what you were just saying really brings that picture a little clearer, takes away the
Mm-hmm.
fuzzy edges that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another big factor with it, which most people don't realize with cancer, is like cancer is not like a virus or a bacteria. Like, let's take COVID, for example. We all know about COVID,
Right.
right? It's out there. It's floating around, some type of viral activity going around, and you can come into contact with that and it can enter into your body and create all kinds of terrible havoc, right? Cancer is not like that. Cancer is actually can be a part of our body's natural cellular renewal process. So, like, we have like a gazillion cells in our bodies. That's not the technical number, but you get the
Right.
picture, right? We have like a gazillion cells in our bodies.
Yeah.
And all of our cells have a cellular life associated with them, and all of them have particular jobs that need to be accomplished, and that's their purpose, right? And typically, at the end of their life or at the end of their job, they get recycled by the body. And that happens through the process of your immune system. It will go around, scour your body constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of your life, looking for these cells that need to be recycled and then renewed. And then they get replaced, like with fresh new cells. We have a problem though sometimes because when we come into contact with things that could alter our cellular activity, which have to do with things like what we eat, what we drink, how we manage stress, what's in our environment, sometimes the cells can become altered and a switch will get triggered where the cell that needs to be replaced will not cooperate. And then it starts regenerating itself, like proliferating at, a rapid speed. And that's what cancer is. Now, when you think to yourself, okay, if this is what's happening, that's actually happening in everyone's body all the time. And like, if you can, I know it sounds weird, but like, if you can get a handle on that, then you can think to yourself, well, how can I stop that process from happening in the first place? And the key to that has to do with your immune system. How strong is your immune system? Are you overloaded in any way where your immune system, the focus of your immune system gets separated? Like if you have a lot of inflammation in your body, if you have other types of chronic disease, types of foods that you eat, all of these things interplay with how well, and gut health is a huge one. That's a whole other podcast, but that's a huge,
yeah.
how well that is balanced, your microbiome is balanced, that all affects how well your immune system is functioning and how strong your defenses are against things like cancer. So like if your immune system is firing on all cylinders, typically when this is going on, you'll never even know it because your immune system will go around, it'll find the cells that are like not cooperating, it'll trap them and it will eliminate them from the body. But when you are overloaded, that's when stuff falls through the cracks and that's when stuff starts to develop. And the kicker is of all this, right? Did you know that it could take most cancers, I'm not saying all, but a big number of cancers and breast cancers included, it could take up to 10 years before a cancer can develop to the point where you can detect it on any type of diagnostic scan. Did you know that?
No, but that makes sense now because that doctor that I've never forgotten what she said within or
10
up to 10 years.
years. Right. Right. So,
See how interesting that is. Hmm.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
we don't think about all that as
No.
humans going through our day-to-day life.
No.
And I don't think even the majority of people, unless you have something else going on that you're treating or living
Hmm.
with, I don't think you think about just how much your environment, all those things you listed, your environment, your stress factors, the food that you eat, all of
Even
that,
even
what smoke or
medication.
drink and all, everything that you put in
Hmm.
your body, I guess, put it
Hmm.
that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even medication that you might be on. That
Hmm.
all plays a huge factor.
It
And I
does.
think that you just, as a normal person, and I know I'm guilty of it. We all are.
Hmm.
You get in like you said, you're a wife and a mom. That's two full-time jobs right there.
Hmm.
And then maybe you work outside the home too. And everybody is just so overwhelmed every day. You might not
Hmm.
feel like you are, or say, look at yourself and you're like, oh, I'm not, this is just life. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, no, actually, that's not how it's supposed to be so filled with stress.
So true. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
And
And
you know
that
what?
plays such a big part. Think about, and I'm preaching to the choir, how, at the end of some days or some mornings when you wake up, every muscle in your body is so sluggish and tired. You're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make it through the day?
Hmm.
Everybody's had those days. I think everybody, when they have those days, they should start thinking about what can I do to help make me not feel my muscles feel so heavy in the
Hmm.
morning.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big, your body's telling you something. Your body's like,
Absolutely.
what are you doing to me?
It's red flags.
Yes, and
Absolutely is.
We ignore them.
Hey, guilty as
Oh,
charged.
me too.
You know, when prior to my breast cancer diagnosis, when I think about that whole 10-year span and I look back, right? I can remember having a lot of problems with my immune system, but I didn't know it. Like it didn't like register to me that that was happening. I had I would get sick all the time, lots of sickness. And I always attributed it to, my son going to school because let's face it, when your kids go to school, there's all kinds of stuff out there and they bring it home to you.
Yes.
Lovely gifts, right? That they do.
They're
Right?
germ factories.
They are. They're like little hotbeds of bacteria.
That's
That's what those
right.
classrooms are. Sorry for teachers out there or
No,
whatever.
they know it
It is.
too.
It's true. So, I mean, I would always catch whatever he had, multiple times a year. I know we're just meeting, but I always had problems with sinus infections, sinus
Mhm.
headaches. I had problems, digestive issues, um, constipation, diarrhea. I also had a lot of problems. I would have skin rashes all the time, mysterious skin rashes. I would have UTIs, chronic UTIs, always. And
Goodness, you were a walking hot mess.
I was. But you know what's weird about this? I mean, I would always go to my doctor because, again, I was always a very compliant kind of a person. Like, if I was taught that, your doctors, they know what's best for you and who better to tell you what to do. So I was in and out of my doctor constantly. And they would constantly write me some kind of prescription for some
Mhm.
antibiotic or whatever, medication, and I would go on my merry way. But then weirdly, usually as soon as I was done with the course of that medication, the thing would come right back. And
Mhm.
if I wasn't at the doctor, I was at the pharmacy getting some kind of over the counter, solution because I was looking for relief.
Right.
But really, what was weird about it is like when you're experiencing stuff like that, it never really occurs to you that, a sinus infection might be related to a UTI, right? Or a rash might be related to digestive problems,
Right.
right? And the reason why is because all of those problems have to do with your immune system. And because my immune system was clearly compromised, that before we even knew what compromised immunity was, that's like a buzzword now, but it was compromised and I didn't know it. And you were saying, like you just get used to feeling a certain way.
Mhm.
In my mind, I thought, well, I guess that's how it is, I mean, I'm getting older, and then, you talk to a lot of people and everybody's kind of in the same boat. And there's like a gazillion medications. Either they give them to you or you can buy them over the counter. And you start thinking, this must be what it is. This is what it is to get older. So you just start to come to a place where it starts feeling normal and natural to feel like crap all the time,
Yeah.
to feel tired, to feel exhausted, to feel like you're dragging yourself through the day and to feel like you have no energy, to feeling like you have brain fog, to feeling like
And all those physical ailments, because I mean, I went through it too for a long
mhm,
time,
mhm.
and no one could tell me what was wrong with me.
Me too, me too.
Um,
It's like, oh, you're fine. Your tests are fine. Here, take this
right, right.
medication,
And
right?
then, but that also that plays because when it's the longevity of it, when it goes on for not a few days and not a few weeks, I'm talking months. I'm talking a
Mhm.
year, year and a half,
Mhm.
2 years.
Mhm.
That really wreaks havoc on your mental health as well.
Definitely. It's
So, I mean, it's
depressing.
just, from head to toe, I can't even think of a word for it, mess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and not only that, but it kind of feeds into a feeling of kind of like I was saying, this kind of a hopelessness or a resignation. You
Right.
become sort of like apathetic about it. Like, well, there's nothing I could do about this. I guess I just have to endure it. This is what it is.
That's a
Right?
great way of putting it. When you said resignation, you're just resigned to it.
Absolutely.
And,
I
yeah,
was
and you
there.
had mentioned you talked everybody else is saying the same thing. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, this is with me. And think about it, folks. You out there listening, think about how many times you've had a conversation with someone and you're all experiencing something.
It's true. It's so incredibly true. It really is.
I was at an event last weekend, a large event, and I, talked to a lot of people, and without fail, every single one of them was talking about a physical ailment that they had. And then
Mm-hmm.
I jokingly said, "Is this because we're now in our 50s?"
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
everything that you've been saying, I mean, think about it, folks, and you're going to start noticing in your own daily life and conversations with coworkers, colleagues, family members, everybody's experiencing something. And then we really should be asking ourselves, wait a minute, stop. Why?
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. It's huge.
Yes.
it's like the turning point for everything, when you can come to at least an awareness that like, hey, something's really not right here,
Right.
because honestly, the way our bodies are designed, I mean, and I learned this through my experience, but the way our bodies are designed to heal. It's built in. I mean, think about it. If it wasn't, the minute you came in contact with any kind of bacteria or anything, it would kill you. Or if you got a little cut, it would kill you,
Right.
because you would just bleed out. But our bodies are actually designed to heal themselves. So the key becomes like, well, how do I support that process? And that's sort of the realization that I came to in my journey, because as I was thinking about, what were my options? And I really was looking for options. I was disappointed that the only options were the only options,
Radiation and
That's
chemo and
it. They were the only options, And I happen to be a Christian, so I spent a lot of time in prayer trying to figure out, what was going to be my next move, because I was really, like you said, I was terrified. I was afraid,
Hmm.
and I needed some direction and peace. And so that was the way I approached it. And through that time, I just got this overwhelming sense that I have to do some research on this and really understand this before I make a move. And through that process is really where I discovered a lot of these things that I've been sharing about, the power of the immune system. And then my question became, well, how do I support that? What, what do you do about it? Because often, you think, well, okay, that might be it, but there's nothing I could do about it because this is my body. This is the way I'm made. And that's when I discovered the power of nutrition and how that's such an integral part of supporting your immune system and the body's ability to heal. And, it's funny when I think back, like, I was telling you about that 10-year period prior, and you said, well, before you were a health coach, I was not a poster child for healthy anything. I would never eat a healthy thing. I would actually prefer to eat the thing that was worst for me that tasted the best, because
Yeah,
that's
pizza and
just
milkshakes, man.
that and and is it deep fried,
Right.
smothered in ketchup and chocolate? I'm all over it. That was the person I was, first in the drive-through line. Whatever was fast, whatever was easiest, that's
Right.
that was my go-to. And I say this because I want people to know that I'm not like perfect. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a perfect person that these things happen and I had the perfect solution. It was just
Right.
like, I'm just like you, right? And so, or some of you, maybe not all of you, but some of
But
you.
you stopped, you recognized that little whisper that you were getting, or nudge, or whatever it is that you call it. I always call them nudges.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you recognized that nudge telling you, hey, wait, stop.
Mm-hmm.
You got to look into this a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank God that you did.
Well, it just, as I did that, I was amazed. And you know what? It just made a lot more sense to me personally to nourish my body and try to reset and correct things that were going on inside of me than it did to bombard myself with poisons, hoping that maybe I could survive it and get well. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was a big turning point for me. And what's interestingly, at that time, I met a woman who had been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer 20 years prior to me. And she was still living and she was thriving. And it blew me away because, I mean, as
Well,
you
you
know,
typically hear stage 4 and you're thinking 6 months or less.
yeah, right. Exactly. That's it. Death sentence, right?
Right.
And so it amazed me, first of all, that I met somebody like that because, like you said, I mean, I know many people in my lifetime who have been diagnosed with cancers, different kinds, and really don't know one person who lived 20 years after a diagnosis,
Right.
especially after an advanced stage cancer.
Right.
And so I spoke with her, and she went a completely natural route. And, it was such a blessing to meet somebody like that because, it's one thing, you might hear about this and you might think, that's hogwash. But like when you actually meet a person who did that, it's a total game changer. So I
Well,
asked her
she
about
was put in front of you for a reason.
absolutely. Absolutely. It was like a
Yeah.
guidepost. It was
Oh,
like, it was
yes.
like a lighthouse.
I was
This was
just going to say
it.
there's that bright shining light.
Yes.
Pay
Yes.
attention.
Yes. And so I asked her about her experience, and it just amazed me. And she gave me the most amazing insight. She said to me, if you're even thinking about doing something natural, you may want to give it a try because number one, you do have more time than the doctors imply. Like when you go in, they give you the diagnosis, like, oh my God, you got to get into treatment right now, or you're going to die tomorrow, you're going to die tomorrow. You know what I mean? That's the feeling in the room. She said, yeah. And of course, now we know we have like probably 10 years, you know? And so that was, so she was telling me, if you want to try it, maybe you want to give it a try, see what happens. If it doesn't work for you, you can always go back to treatment. They'll always take you back. They'll never tell you, no, you can't have surgery. They'll never tell you, no,
Right.
you can't have radiation or no, you can't have chemotherapy. And I thought, oh my God, this is like the best plan B I've ever had because
And what a relief to even have a plan B. Because,
yes,
I mean, we're not here to bash doctors.
no,
That's not what we're doing, folks.
no,
So
no,
please,
no.
please, let's be clear on that. We're not bashing doctors at all. What we're trying to share and why I had you on the show is that there are alternatives that you can think about and look into. And it's a
Absolutely.
very personal choice.
It is. It totally
Yeah.
is. It absolutely is. And, as I thought about that and I thought about what she said, and I thought, you know what? I don't really have anything to lose, and I thought,
Right.
well, um, if nothing else, I thought maybe I could help to strengthen my body to go through a treatment,
Right.
right? Before I actually went in there. Because when you think about it, if you're diagnosed with something, your immune system is compromised, you're probably in some depleted state that you may not be aware of. And then if you introduce a very devastating type of treatment like a chemotherapy, it's difficult to endure that. I mean, it's a very difficult treatment protocol because it actually impairs your immune system, which
Right.
ironically is the thing that you need to get better,
Right.
you know?
Well, and like you had used the words, I didn't want to bombard myself with poison.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that was big for me.
that's actually what that stuff is. We all know that. This is not
Hmm.
news to anyone out there.
Hmm.
Radiation and chemo, they're poisoning your body. And you just said it's ironic because you're already compromised and they're making your immune system even less than. So of course you're
Hmm.
going to feel really, really horrible at times, and some
Yeah,
people more so than others, depending on the
absolutely.
level of treatment. But
Yeah.
so you went through this whole thing, you had this mind shift, you met this amazing woman
Hmm.
who I think was heaven sent for you.
I agree.
What an amazing thing. What an amazing thing. And that almost brought me to tears right there as soon as you said that. Because she was put there for a reason. But um, so you had this mind shift and you're like, all right, I'm going to look into this. I'm going to do this. And you said that you used to eat crap. That was your go-to because, well, let's face it, the stuff tastes good.
Absolutely.
you know, I love it too, but I can't eat it
Absolutely.
anymore either. But
Absolutely.
so you decided, what was your first step? Like, did you say, all right, I'm going to start eating salads? I mean, what was your first thing that you were thinking of in your head I've got to eat healthier. I've got to get my immune system built up. Because most of us, honestly, we don't know how to do that.
Absolutely. I didn't know either, but I learned, the biggest turning point for me was to remove toxicity from my body because I was, we mentioned before, we're constantly in contact with things like foods, our medicines, our environment, sometimes our water, our air, you know what I mean? And our stress level, we have toxicity that's built up in our bodies over time. And everybody's got that because, hey, we all live in the same world, right?
Right.
But
Right.
we don't realize we have it. And it shows up when we start having problems. Then we know there's toxicity when maybe our immune system's not working right. Maybe like you're saying, like you can't get out of bed in the morning because you feel completely exhausted, right?
Well, your
So,
muscles feel heavy.
yeah.
Because I had that
Hmm.
for quite a long time. And then I was diagnosed with a rare form of diabetes.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's why I don't feel good.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, very different. But I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go
that's
ahead.
okay. That's okay. So the big key for me was to remove toxicity from my body. And the reason why I wanted to do that was because I wanted to strengthen my immune system. So that's where I started. I began detoxing my body using a lot of things like juicing. I went somewhat vegan for a little while because again, like we talk about foods and stuff like that, there is a lot of toxicity associated with meats because, especially like meats, because when they're conventionally raised, they're often given quite a bit of hormones and
Right.
antibiotics and things like that. And what I didn't know was like whatever they eat, we eat because
I
it's
was
in
going to say,
flesh.
and what they're fed.
Yeah, it's in the flesh of the meat.
Right.
So, I moved away from that for a little while because my goal was, and again, it's not like I got this epiphany and I was like, oh, great, I want to do this. My
Right.
motivation was, I don't want to die. And I really don't, if I don't have to, I don't want to do those other treatments. So if this is what it takes, then I'm going to give it a whirl. But, I thought to myself, if it's going to work at all, I got to give it everything I got and
Right.
go all in and just do the thing. Right. So I did that. And interestingly, so that was the first part, detoxifying, using a lot of fruits and vegetables, moving away from meats, moving away from things like, preservatives and stuff. So going really whole foods, getting away from processed foods, getting off the drive-through line, like all of those things,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And interestingly, when I was diagnosed, I had just entered menopause and I was one of those lucky gals that packs on the pounds, what do they call that
Hmm.
freshman 15 that you get when you go through menopause.
Right.
And that stuff is stubborn, did not want to come off,
Huh,
right? It
I
just
hear you.
like you can't get that stuff off your body.
Yeah,
And
no matter what you do, no matter what you eat, how much exercise you do,
you
right?
can't, right? And so I had gained before, just prior to my breast cancer diagnosis, I had gained like 35 pounds. And I was, getting bigger clothes. I was disgusted. I hated it. And I was just, but it was one of those other things. Like I resigned myself. I was like, oh, this is what it is. I'm in menopause. I'm
Right.
just going to get chunky around the middle, and that's fine. My husband still loves me. It's okay.
Right.
And so, as I went through this detox process, right, all of that weight melted off of my body on its own without me even trying. And it was incredible to me. And, like I tell people that, I'm like, oh, well, everybody will lose weight when they get on a cancer regimen. Like, well, yeah, not really, because it wasn't like I was trying and I wasn't exhausted. I had energy. My skin looked good. My hair looked good. And I felt good because I was losing weight and my body started feeling stronger. Interestingly enough, about that, I didn't know this then, but I know it now. The reason why that was such an integral part of like resetting my immune system and also why it triggered all of this dramatic weight loss in a short period of time was because when we have toxicity building up in our body as a defense mechanism traps those toxins in fat cells and then it stores it in our bodies, typically right around the midsection. So if you're a person out there like I was, that you just all of a sudden you start getting all this stuff and nothing you do will take it off, you probably have toxicity. I didn't know that. But then as I removed it, my body just kind of bounced back. And now, like this 8 years later, I have not gained that back, which is a big deal, especially if you're someone who has experience with dieting over your lifetime, which I was, you know. It was always like gain weight, lose it, gain weight, lose
Right.
it. Until I hit menopause, I was just like gain weight, gain weight,
Right.
gain
Yeah.
weight, no losing, right?
Yeah.
But then after that, and then what's cool about it is like my whole body started to reset. And as I said, I started feeling better. I didn't tell people that this is what I was doing. Like there were only a few people that knew that I was diagnosed with cancer because I, I'm, I guess I'm timid in the way that I didn't want I didn't want to have to combat people's judgment over my choice of what I was going to do for treatment. Or I didn't want people's fear to take hold of me. Because if you're diagnosed, your family is terrified for you as
Yes.
well.
And that
And
that lands on you.
it does. And it's so much. You have your own fear, you have other people's fear. And then sometimes that can be a real trigger and a driving factor for people when they end up going into certain treatments because they feel the pressure, like because
Right.
everybody is so afraid.
Right.
So for me, I couldn't deal with the extra fear. I had enough of my own fear to combat every single day, right? So I thought, well, I'm just going to do this. I'll see what happens. If it works, then I'll tell people about it, you know? So as I was going through this process and I'm losing this weight as I'm detoxing and stuff, and my friends were seeing me because they had all seen me kind of blow up,
Right.
chunk up, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you look great. What are you doing? What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing this detox thing." And they're like, "Oh my God, you look so good." And like I started feeling really good, and then people started noticing, and I had regained energy like you were talking about, like prior to when I was dragging myself through my existence, it was like it never occurred to me that I would feel energetic again, but my energy regained and everything just got better. And what was cool about it, as I was learning about the things to do and to implement, my body started feeling better. I knew something was changing and I knew it was a positive change that was happening. And then after that, I went through that 6 months later. I went back for retesting because they wanted to see me. And at that time, when they did the testing, they couldn't find the cancer in my breast anymore. So they gave me the NED, which any cancer patient knows. That's what you want to hear. That means no evidence of disease. So technically, they call me in remission. I say I'm healed. And here I am, 8 years later. But that was the catalyst. That was the catalyst for
So do you continue to get regular scans or checkups or anything like that?
what I choose to do is because I don't really want to expose myself to radiation. I want to minimize that as much as possible. So
Right.
what I do is I get thermograms, and if you're not aware of what that is, it's sort of a heat-seeking type of photography.
Hmm.
No one touches you. You go to a thermographer. They put you in a very cold room, so your core body temperature cools down, and then they take photos of you from a distance. There's no compression or anything like that. And then what they can do is they can look for heat signatures. And typically, if there's some type of cancerous activity going on, there'll be a big concentration because there's a lot of cellular activity there. There's a lot of blood flow there, and that'll be like a big heat signature. That's how you'll know. I also do a blood testing because there's actually a lot that you can see in the blood, which
Hmm.
I personally think is great because it's probably one of the least invasive things that you can do, you
Yeah.
know? So those
Yeah.
are the types of things that I personally choose to do. And for people who are interested, I always recommend to go with thermography because it's really good and it's pretty effective,
Well,
especially
and look into
before.
things, folks. Don't,
Yeah.
and I'm the same way. Like you were saying, you always felt like you were this compliant patient. The doctor
Hmm.
told you to do this, and I've found that as I age, I question a
Hmm.
lot more. Not trying to be negative or against what my doctor's saying. I want to know, okay, and
Yeah.
dot dot dot.
Yeah, I agree. And actually,
So and I you have to be your own advocate.
you do.
Because doctors are human too, and
Hmm.
they might learn something from their patients.
That's always a possibility. And something my husband had said that to me at the time when I told him about, what I was thinking about doing. And it's kind of funny because when I was at this time period when I was doing this research, I was actually waiting for a second opinion, but I couldn't get in there right away. And that's when all this stuff happened in that
Mm.
interval of time. Again, another kind of divine intervention where I had time. I
Yeah.
had time to look into it because I was just waiting. And so I told him about this whole concept of, natural healing and, what do you think? And he was so incredibly supportive. He said, "Hey, I'm if that were me, I would be the first one to do that." That's what he had said. So he was very supportive. And he also said something interesting to me too. He said, "You know what? Whatever you choose, you're the one who has to endure it. I mean,
Right.
no matter how good or caring your doctor is, they're not going to be with you through those times. They're not going to sit next to you and get the same infusion and, identify with everything that you're doing. You're the one who's going
Right.
to be having to deal with whatever the fallout is of whatever treatment that you decide to do. Interestingly, though, when I went the natural route, I was the beneficiary of some pretty amazing side effects as opposed to side effects I probably would have had to go through had I gone a conventional route. But
Yep.
that's just me.
Well, and it's an amazing journey. And
Mhm.
you certainly you give reason for folks, just to me, another reason, because I always question and I always look into different avenues,
Mhm.
because at least in my opinion, because I'm not a doctor either.
Right.
But in my opinion, being my own advocate, doing my own research, and then questioning, okay, hey, I found this, why wouldn't this help me?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
and I do my research. I'm diligent in that way.
Mhm.
And I think you have to be. And I know folks sometimes maybe your brain, if you've just been diagnosed with something or you're in the midst of something, and it's overwhelming. Like you said, your world stops
It does.
and you
Totally
can't think.
does. Nope. You can't. You can't.
And here's another little thing, and I know a lot of people probably do. When you have something like that could potentially be life altering, make sure you have someone with you to be a second set of ears.
Huge, huge. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you cannot even articulate
No, you can't.
any words or formulate questions at that moment.
And you
It's
think you're
it's
going to remember what
impossible.
they say,
No,
but you
you
don't.
won't. You won't. You do need someone with you.
Yeah, and
Someone
I
who
even take a
supports
tablet
you.
with me. And sometimes when the doctor's talking to you, your brain stops. You're like, you didn't even take notes in your tablet.
Yeah. Well, what I did was I would do afterward, when I was getting retested and stuff, is I would use my phone and I would just record whatever they said so that, like as a voice memo. So I could like play it back and I could hear what the heck was going on.
Not all doctors allow that.
Ah, that's true. I didn't think of that.
Yeah,
Mine was
I've been
good.
in doctors' offices where it's clearly posted on the wall.
Wow.
No recordings.
Bummer.
Yeah, well, think it's a liability issue.
I guess that's true. I
You
guess
know,
that's true.
doctors do have it tough on actually. I mean, liability and the amount that they have to pay for their liability insurance just because of the way the world is.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's not, that's at least where I live, it's very hard to have any type of specialist doctor in our area. We can't keep them
Mm.
because it's so expensive for
Yeah,
them
yeah, yeah.
to even practice. Or this is interesting because I had actually a doctor that I go to say this. I didn't record him and I'm not sharing his name, but I'm going to share what he said. He said, many times I am unable to treat my patients the way I feel that they actually need to be treated because my hands are tied
Yeah, that's true.
because
That's
of
super true.
insurance.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah, that
And
is true.
what a
And
sad state of affairs that is.
it's true.
So,
It's very,
but where, as we get ready to wrap up, where can folks find you? Do you have any resources out there that folks can tap into? All of that good stuff.
sure. Well, you can find me. I hang out sometimes on Instagram. That's my handle is at good_nature_wellness because that's the name of my business, Good Nature Wellness. Or you can find me on Facebook, also at Good Nature Wellness. And you can find me on my website, which is www.goodnaturewellness.com. I also have a podcast that I share information on, kind of like what you do. And that's all called the Good Nature Wellness Podcast. And you can find that I stream everywhere too. And also, I do have a resource that I'd like to offer to your listeners today. It's called 5 Things I Wish I Had Known Before I Was Diagnosed with Breast Cancer. And I put this together based on my own experience, because as I went through the journey and I learned all these things, I kept thinking to myself, why didn't anybody tell me this? How come I don't know this stuff? Because honestly, I believe 100% with every fiber of my being, had I known some of this stuff beforehand, I could have avoided breast cancer in the first place. And so that's pretty much the reasoning behind creating this resource. I talk a little bit more about my journey, but I also share some practical things that, you can use every day in your life to sort of get your body back on track and seriously lower your risk of ever having to hear the words, you have breast cancer. So you can get that on my website. It's www.goodnaturewellness.com/5 things freebie, and you can just download it for free.
Awesome. What an awesome freebie. And folks, that link and all of the links that she mentioned will be in the show notes. and the show description, depending upon if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it, what have you. They'll all be available for you to click on and check everything out. This has been an amazing conversation, and I want to thank you so much for being my guest today because I think what you shared is so valuable, and people need to, like I had said earlier, you need to be your own advocate. You need to look into things and question,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
don't just blindly follow because, like you also said, it's you're going through it.
Yes.
It'll
One,
be you, just you. You have all the people, all your loved ones and doctors and what have you, specialists as a part of it, but it's you who are going to go through the whole journey.
absolutely.
So make sure that you're doing the absolute best for
Mm-hmm.
your body and for your life because, there's a reason you're on this planet, folks, and there's a reason you're here. And if you don't need to leave it sooner than you need to, then don't, because you need to
Yeah.
stick around because obviously there's a plan for you.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been a true blessing having you on. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. It's been wonderful speaking with you.
And everybody out there listening, I hope. Oh, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, look at me. I'm being remiss. You've got to toss out a nugget of hope, lady. I ask all of my guests to toss out a nugget of hope as we, close out the show. So, what would your nugget of hope for the listeners be today?
My nugget of hope is that you don't have to wait to feel amazing. Take it from me. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait until your doctor diagnoses you with something to make some changes that could have a major impact on your health and the way that you feel every day. Sickness, disease, and even getting older. I mean, I'm 60 years old. It doesn't have to mean that you become like a person who is dragging your way through life, just existing and barely holding on. You can feel 100% amazing every single day. Don't wait. You can do it.
Awesome nugget. Awesome nugget. And that's a beautiful way to close out the show. Once again, Barbara, thank you so much for being my guest. And everybody out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode, folks, because I know you've got friends, family, or loved ones that can certainly benefit from the information that was shared today. And Barbara sharing her journey with all of you. This is Kim Langling, your host of Let Fear Bounce. Everybody be well, stay well, and above all, be blessed. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Let Fear Bounce. Your time is precious, and I am so grateful that you chose to spend just a small part of it with myself and my guest today. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss our weekly nuggets of hope and inspiration. And remember, folks, let fear bounce because you've got this. So until next time, folks, keep your light shining bright.